Hello and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Riche of the MHRT Network. Over to my left or right, depending on which way you are facing your screen, is Alex Gibbons. That's right, the real Alex Gibbons. You can catch his articles there on Arrowhead Addict. You can catch him from time to time on the Lockdown Defense Network as well, where he breaks down his Kansas City Chiefs and also on the Lightning Fast Fantasy podcast. That is during the regular season only. Obviously, Alex is in a state of bliss, and may or may not still be coming down off of an alcohol-induced hangover of some sort. But we shall see. Either way, Alex, we will be obviously covering the Chiefs' Super Bowl win shortly after we complete the rounds here. Back for another show, we have Robert. Robert, thank you for joining us, covering all things Chargers from that perspective, which is going to be wunderbar. And last but not least, we have Angelo, aka Raider Transplant. He is going to be filling in on the Wild Wild West for Captain Jack for the foreseeable future. Well, Captain, as he stated, will be unavailable as he proceeds to move on to some other things in his personal life there. Angelo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thanks to the panel. Watched you guys a few episodes now, and I like the flow. So, happy to be taking over for Captain Jack for a few weeks.
Fantastic. And Angelo, as Captain Jack indicated last show, has a rather unique story. He has a reason for the color du chapeau, and super interesting story. Wouldn't mind just covering a little bit about that if you won't mind sharing, Angelo. Yeah. It is a pretty remarkable one, and I think uplifting given the fact that we all have to deal with Alex for the next 10 to 15 minutes, talk about the Super Bowl win.
Oh, longer than that.
Oh, the floor is yours, my friend.
Once you give me the mic, I'm never leaving.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
But no, thanks, Rich. I essentially got to meet Captain Jack through Raider Nation, which is pretty big, as you guys know, globally. But in 2022, July of 2022, I was told I had 30 days to live, maybe less. And the only way for me to even survive and get a miracle is if somehow I could get a liver transplant. Unfortunately, living in Las Vegas, Nevada, and the entire state of Nevada does not have any transplant centers. So I was just basically dying. This wonderful group, if you guys want to look it up, it's housemedicine.com. This wonderful group of nonprofit doctors, basically, they look at critical patients. They saw that I was only 47 at the time. They saw that I could definitely get a chance to save my life. So they grabbed me, put me in their system. And by doing that, instead of me being one of the unfortunate people who just end up passing away because you have to wait so long for a list, I was automatically jumped up to the number one on the transplant list in Southern California. The battle back was quite difficult. Didn't get back to Las Vegas till November of 22. But here I am now, and Raider Nation has been by my side the entire time too. Tons of positive messages. So I'm happy to be with you guys. I love this format you guys have for the show.
Nice to have you here. And I absolutely just I love hearing stories of things like that, and things working out, and kind of the just the system actually working for people to get them through things. So it's fantastic. I'm glad that all worked out, and now that brings you here. So right. So that's a fantastic thing. With the positive, I think we'll maybe start with a bit of a negative quick first, if you don't mind, Alex, and then we'll get into the positives of the Chiefs victory. Obviously, as some of you may or may not have heard, those of you who haven't, I do suggest you kind of quickly scour the news, although I can't imagine that it isn't being covered just about everywhere at this point. Horrible news coming out of Kansas City in the vicinity of the Super Bowl parade there in Kansas City, there was a horrible shooting. I think last I heard it was like 20 or 30 injured, somewhere in that.
Yeah, one dead, 22 injured.
Yeah, it was. That's. I heard there was one fatality, and then it was a fair number, somewhere in the 20s or so, injured. Last I heard, though, they were still compiling some of the information to make sure that they presented accurate information. So I wasn't quite sure of where the numbers and whatnot landed. Either way, horrible news. Awful to see someone do that in such a public place. Particularly egregious, though, is the targeting of children. I have nothing but words that I cannot say on this podcast for people like that. It's just, the answer is just no. And so that in mind, our thoughts and prayers are with those who are injured and those families. I do pray for a quick and fast recovery for all. And it is a shame, because that should have been a joyous occasion for the city, a time to come together rather than a time to pin one against many, especially with a firearm. But I really do hope that those that were injured recover fully, and that hopefully, unfortunately, the one fatality is that's an innocent life lost in that situation. But unfortunately, nothing we can do about it from afar. Just simply pass along our thoughts and know that regardless of which fan base you're with, there is no place for that.
No. Just like we were talking about the beautiful side of life things with like Angela's story and the kind-hearted nature of human beings, right, to do stuff like that. And then it's this is kind of shows that it's full circle, right? And even there's some sick, depraved people out there that just kind of have no regard for other people or other people's lives. And I mean, that's all what it is. It's like, and I'm sure this will spark debates on many other topics down the road, but the fact always remains, doesn't matter what you do or what rules or anything you try to put in place, like there's still going to be people like the individuals that did this stuff today, out there. And that's just part of life, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add a quick one to that, guys, because so recently there was the UNLV shooting that had happened shortly after Thanksgiving, and my son was there, and he was actually he had just walked away from that corridor area 30 minutes after to go to his theater class. So for when that lockdown had happened, obviously we could just text with him. I could just text with them, can't call. You don't know what's going on. Everything was shut down. Where we were at, we're fortunate that in Las Vegas, things happened pretty quickly because of the unfortunate incident that happened to us in 2017. Yeah. So the first responders got there quickly, but it was sad, Rich, that when I finally got a chance to talk to my son, one of his first responses really was, it was almost like he wasn't even shocked. He was like, what, Dad, been preparing for this, growing up in California. We did these drills all the time. And the fact that we live in a society now where my 20-year-old kid is just not, I don't want to say that he was numb, because he's obviously still dealing with a lot of the different traumas of having that happen. But the fact that he was kind of expecting something like that to happen is just, it's a sad note in our society. And I do hope that, prayers and thoughts for everybody who's being affected by this. Really rough that it happened so quickly.
Yeah, to kind of speak on that too, in that being in like your son's kind of generation, I'm 23 myself. And yeah, it was, earthquake and active shooter drills were the two drills that we had at school growing up. It was preparing for something that is completely inevitable, and Mother Nature will just happen, and going on the complete opposite side of that and preparing for something that you never should have to prepare for. You think you send your kids to school and that they should be safe, they should be protected, and there are some sick individuals out there who take advantage of it, and it's terrible. So just echoing again what Rich said, our prayers and thoughts go out to all the families, and especially to the family of the one victim. Our thoughts and prayers and condolences, absolutely.
Yeah, and obviously, this is a sports show. If any of you are expecting either of us to delve into the political aspects of this, the short answer is no. And that's about all I'm going to say on that particular side of this. But yeah, exactly kind of what I said earlier, just a thoughtless crime, something that we all hope that we don't have to deal with or wouldn't need to deal with. But nonetheless, this is a time for community to come together ultimately and be there for those that were impacted by this, and show that despite such horrendous actions taking place, that we can all pull through and show that there is still that positive side to humanity as well, which I have no doubt will likely happen. But I also hope that as much as the negative has been reported on, that we see the flip side of this also get reported on as well, because I think that is important to kind of show that, even in such a dark place and dark time, there is those that are there to kind of lift up when so much has been tamped down or in some cases taken away. So that's that we just wanted to bring that up. Obviously, it is such a huge event, sadly a negative one, but a huge event nonetheless. It did take place today. Obviously impacts this panel here in terms of the fact that this is an AFC West roundtable. So we'd be remiss if we didn't bring that up and discuss it with all of you today. And moving on to what is at least a positive for one of us in the panel. We're going to throw it over to Alex to move on and discuss the Super Bowl win, second in a row, setting up at least the opportunity for KC to try to do what has not been done before, and that is a three-peat. So, Alex, with that in mind, take the floor. Interested to hear your thoughts. The good, what went well, what didn't go well, because obviously there were some things that were, not great in the Super Bowl for the Chiefs as well, despite the outcome. And then we'll all discuss it for a little bit here. And those of you who are joining us live, thank you. If you have any questions for Alex or comments, please go ahead and leave those in the chat, and we'll bring them up on screen.
And please, play the Drake back to back. Cue that up. Get it going. In case anyone missed it, Chiefs, despite all the doubts throughout the year and kind of riding them off through the playoffs, managed to win a Super Bowl again, along with Taylor Swift. So, no, but I mean, I know we were kind of talking about it pre-show, and I went on Coach's show yesterday and talked about it, but taking my Chiefs bias out of it, I'd say that was one of the better Super Bowl games that we've had in recent years. Yeah. I mean, goes to overtime. Both teams, we get to see the Bills, playoff overtime rules put into play. And I kind of ironic that the Chiefs are the first team to benefit from that. But, I mean, what else could you ask for in the final game of the year with, a relatively close scoring game? San Fran had a 10-point lead. You see Mahomes kind of, do what he does and come back in final moments of games and put the team in position to win and ultimately go out and do it. But, I thought the biggest or the coolest thing from this game was, well, we already got one. There we go, John. I knew someone would be out there. But, I thought the coolest from the game was there, for the most part, I mean, there was not a whole lot of calls. Like, it seemed like the refs were kind of letting them play on both sides. There weren't, we didn't leave this game with one call that people could say, at the end of the Eagles game, right, we had the holding call, and then that is I felt kind of took away from the moment that the Chiefs won, and that everyone was talking about, well, you got to let them play. You can't make that call in the final moment. You can't let the game be about that. If we didn't have that in this game, and perhaps the NFL made it a point to tell their refs, let him play a little bit in this one, because, for as much complaining as 49ers fans are doing on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, about, Bosa turning his back to a lineman and that should have been holding, which I'm telling you as a lineman would never be called, but hey, to you, boo-boo. But that was going on both sides. And so, I mean, taking the holding aspect out of it, like, because I know we've said on the show thousands of times, you can go back through any game, watch the all 22 of any game, and you will find at least 5 to 10 holding calls that are very valid, should have been called and weren't. So, taking that out of it, I thought both sides, refs didn't get in the way. There weren't any like controversial no calls. I thought actually at one point that this would be a game where the refs, screwed the Chiefs over, and not really screwed them over because Trent McDuffie absolutely held when he got that call on him. But just like from the sense of, they finally had a call go against them. And, thinking of that moment, I think back to, I'm sure you guys probably don't listen to the Kelsey podcast as religiously as I do, but I know there was a point where,
he has a podcast?
I just want to listen to it at the episode every week. But I remember there was a point where they were talking about people, saying the Chiefs get the calls, and Jason Kelsey said, "No, I mean that's just what good teams do. They capitalize on mistakes and know how to get themselves out of situations when they make one." And this game was a huge testament of that, as well as I thought a testament of how successful and good and elite this defense has been all year, because for literally the first, I'd say 2.5 quarters, it was pretty sloppy football from KC. I mean, I think the ball was put on the ground 5 times. Pacheco lost that one in the end zone, which then we saw, Kelsey getting heated with Reed. Mahomes threw an interception, first or second drive out of the half. I mean, it wasn't very pretty. And I think I even said to you, Rich, like, this might finally be the game where you see the offense kind of, lose. They ran out of Mike's secret stuff in the bottle, right? But then, kind of how I've said all year, like, I mean, this team, the offense doesn't need to go out and be elite and put up 40 points. They just need to not get in the defense's way. And sure, there's components of, Kyle Shanahan blowing it again in the big game, abandoning the run and things like that. But at the same time, like, he was probably doing that because of the pressure that this defense was putting on him, and because of, the way Spagnuolo was playing against him and everything else. And so, we saw the Chiefs make mistakes and play sloppy for the defense, but they didn't make mistakes big enough to put points on the board for the other team, or continuously put the defense, in the negative area and giving San Francisco's offense, 3 looks in the red zone. And then, we saw the, right thing, what we want to happen at the end happen. And I'd say a bigger, kind of the cool poetic justice of all of it is, the people that contributed the most in this game are a lot of the players that, I myself was saying they're gone, or we have like Nick Allegretti, the backup left guard, comes in for Joe Tooney, all-pro left, perennial all-pro offensive lineman. And it's almost like they didn't really miss a beat in terms of the pressures that they were giving up and being able to run the offense the way they have. And in fact, shout out to Nick Allegretti, because I don't know if you guys knew this, but he tore his UCL in his elbow in the second quarter and played the rest of the game.
I heard that.
I don't know how you do that as an offensive lineman. But so, shout out to Nick Allegretti, pending free agent. We'll get into that. But
I have one word for you: drugs.
Yeah. Brace,
morphine, lots and lots of morphine.
Injection right here, and a big ass brace and adrenaline. I guarantee you, the minute he got like into the locker room, he's like, "Oh crap, what is that?"
Head started spinning. He got woozy.
And so you talk about Allegretti, I know I mentioned Amenahue being hurt and what kind of impact would that have. And then we see, Mike Pennell basically come in off the street and just manhandle Trent Williams for the most part, which is like, unbelievable. I mean, so it's just like, crazy heroics from some, key locker room type guys, but not, the guys you would expect to see. And then, obviously MVS catching a touchdown, McCole Hardman catching the touchdown, two guys that were kind of in the doghouse at one time or another during the year are basically non-existent in the terms of being involved in this offense. And, they're the ones that kind of bring the ship home, with those touchdowns. And I think it's, I know I've talked about MVS before, but like just for that guy being pretty much the sole reason with 2 drops that they don't have 2 wins in the regular season, to go out and, catch a wide open, touchdown is just like, I think a testament to, reading the front office and them constantly saying like, we got the guys that we know we want. We don't need to retool anything. And, that all came to fruition when it mattered most. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes is undoubtedly HIM. He is that dude. You can hate him if you want, but you got to respect what he's done in his, 6 years as a starter, winning 3 Super Bowls. I mean, I'm sure if you're a religious scroller through X, you've seen the crazy ass stats about, there's only been, I saw there's only been 7 Super Bowls that were won where the other team was behind 10 points or more, and Patrick Mahomes has 3 of those. Like all 3 of his Super Bowls are behind by 10 points or more, and he comes back. Or, there's another one going around of, when the game's in the final minutes and the team with the ball's down 3 or 3 or less, or a touchdown or less, and to come out successful. Mahomes is a perfect 7 for 7 in those situations. You can paint it with refs helping them, with the game being rigged, whatever. But I mean, that is a pretty ridiculous stat line and pretty ridiculous, just closer killer mentality type, just traits that man has, to be able to be calm. And I mean, never really, the situation never seems too big for them. And they go out and, perfect pairing with Coach Reed, perfectly run team. And they go out and execute. And, I say that last part because of the whole conundrum with, obviously the 49ers saying like, oh, we didn't even know about these new rules. We never talked about them. And then you got every KC player's like, we had like 4 meetings about this.
Yeah.
There's even a video today that came out where they're talking on the sideline like, well, they're obviously they're gonna kick. So which way do you want to take it? And then they comes back like, oh, like Mahomes like, they asked to receive, like, let's go. Like they all knew it was just, but it goes to show like how well ran the team is from top to bottom and how thorough they are across everything. Because even something as minuscule as the change in overtime rules, you wouldn't think would make a difference. And maybe it didn't, but at the same time, you definitely saw videos in that key moment of 49ers players like not really focused on the game or task at hand of like, oh, I didn't even know that they get to go regardless. Like, what are we doing? And so, that stuff, I think this was kind of the big Super Bowl to kind of show like, this is a well-run, well-built franchise, and kind of top to bottom, we kind of saw a testament of that through the multi-facets of this game. But yeah, I mean, hell of a Super Bowl. Sick to go back to back, obviously. First team to do that since Brady in 2002, 2003. Definitely think that there's things that need to be addressed or are done this offseason to go for the three-peat. Am I going to sit here and say like, oh, they're winning 3 or 4? No, I mean, I'm not going to be that arrogant, but I think that being said, Mahomes has consistently shown as long as he's healthy and as long as he's got 10 other guys that are decent athletes, you can't count him out.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Angelo, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so there's a lot there, and obviously it's nice to give you the floor, Alex. Super Bowl wise, it's actually fun to hear it from a Kansas City fan's point of view. It was really nice to hear it that way, because there's a lot of 49er fans that don't think that way at all. They're looking at it as basically they lost the game. You guys didn't really win it. McCaffrey fumbles the ball. Dre Greenlaw, who's a big part of that defense, trying to run into the sideline and tears his Achilles. And it felt like, as I at least was watching the game, there were so many reasons why the 49ers should win. And then you could kind of see like maybe this whole Taylor Swift 13 thing is the thing, because Dre Greenlaw pulling his Achilles, what the F, right? Or any of these other weird things happening. And even to the very end, right? Even at the very end, the offensive lineman just lets Chris Jones go. That's the play, and it's the weirdest thing. I mean, the lineman even calls out that other lineman. Like it's just so many weird things fell Kansas's way. Like I said to you in the beginning of the show, congratulations, because that will be the last time you guys get to go to this thing, and I mean that, and I really mean it. And for all you Raider Nations that's watching this, if you haven't seen Antonio Pierce do the pivot interview yet, because you were too busy maybe watching the Kelsey podcast for some reason, I don't know. But if you have not seen it, please watch it. It really gets into what we are doing. And what I like the most about all the different changes that's happening for us is that we're ready to rock, man. Oh, and by the way, I just want to point this out, guys. Makes me feel good that Kansas won the Super Bowl in some ways. I have to swallow it, but it makes me feel good because as far as I can remember, the Raiders are the last team to beat Kansas. We were the last team to beat Kansas. We beat them with, I don't know, Aiden O'Connell. But we mainly just beat them offensively. I mean,
you had some turnovers.
We pretty much showed everyone from the Ravens to the Niners exactly how you impose your will on someone like Patrick Mahomes. And all credit to Patrick Mahomes, by the way. He is amazing. But it takes a team to win in a football game, and don't know what's going to happen in free agency. I know Chris Jones said today in the parade, I'm coming back. But is he coming back for less than Aaron Donald type money? Because, when I throw it to the rest of you guys, Chris Jones arguably right now is the best defensive tackle that we have in football. So if it's Aaron Donald money, I don't know how Kansas is going to afford Aaron Donald money and, I don't know, keep all the other people you're going to be mentioning, Alex. So again, I don't see the dynasty happening. There's a reason why the Cowboys couldn't do it. That was Steve Young and the 49ers. There's a reason why the Patriots couldn't do it.
I'm glad you said this, though.
And, I'll end with it because I know Alex really wants to speak up, but I'm just going to say this. Antonio Pierce, who went 3-1 in the West Division. We can only go by records, people. And we were kicking the dog stuff out of Kansas in our own home stadium until we messed up. We screwed that game up. Not Kansas was better. We messed it up. Antonio Pierce and the rest of the Raiders pretty much feel that we have Kansas City's number. We will beat them. That will be the last time you get to celebrate in our stadium because you're done. That's it. You are finished. So I'll throw it back to you, Rich, but that's my thoughts on it.
I just wanted to say, I get what you're saying on the moves, but the fact remains, right, last year, lost Tyreek Hill. Oh, they're done. What'd they do? Win a Super Bowl. This year, lost to the Broncos, to Rich's team's credit, lost to Denver, lost to the Raiders in Arrowhead on Christmas Day. I think lost 3 of the 5 games in a stretch. I even myself said it's going to be tough to see them get to where they want to go without figuring things out. Led the league in drop passes, had the most penalized offensive tackle in the league. This was the year that Mahomes' contract was the biggest cap hit ever. And what did they do? Win the Super Bowl. So it's only going to get easier from this point for them to retool the things they need. And I know coaches said, this was the time to take away the dynasty talks, and the Chiefs have only continued to get to where they want to be and win Super Bowls. So I'm excited for all the changes in the AFC West, but I wasn't going to let you get away with acting like the Chiefs are just done because Antonio Pierce is in town or Jim Harbaugh's in LA. I mean, there's a lot of things that everyone needs to do, but KC included. But like I said, as long as Mahomes is healthy and Andy Reid's still there, really hard to count them out at this point.
Just real quick on that though, Rich, and then I just want to throw this out quick. I'm not saying that Kansas is done because of the Raiders. I'm saying Kansas is done, period, because if you just, for the people who forgot, Kansas wasn't in the Super Bowl when Joe Burrow wasn't injured. That was Cincinnati. Now, do you really think it's just Cincinnati that's going after Kansas? Lamar's pretty mad. The Broncos are going to be angry. The Chargers are coming. Like, there's so many factors to why the Kansas City Chiefs won't be back to the Super Bowl. But I'll toss it back to you, Rich, and you could kind of talk about your thing.
Well, I think to answer this question, which I think is a very good one, by the way. So thank you, Big Joe, for the question here.
Yeah, I forgot that was sitting there.
Yeah. So the short answer is, I actually think that they are a dynasty at this point.
Yeah.
I think that is a fair comment to be. If you're, again, it pains me to have to say it aloud. If I'm going to be honest,
I'm coming in clutch.
Mama Gibbons, how you doing?
There we go.
But I think in fairness, if we're going to be honest with who we are dealing with within the division, they are a dynasty at this point. They have won the division like 7 years in a row. They've made it to the championship game. I think all
6.
7 of those years too, if I'm not mistaken. Or at least 6.
Mahomes' season's never ended earlier than the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Right. So it's 7 for 7, 7 for 7. That's you're well into Patriot territory, and there was no argument from anyone calling them a dynasty. So I think I think that that's a fair comment to make. Now the question though is, all right, they had Brady. You have Mahomes. Mahomes is arguably on a better track than Brady was in his career, or at the very least similar. I would argue
arguable.
Better.
I think it's way better.
I would argue better. Okay. So I would argue better. And so, I mean, do they need to three-peat to be seen as a dynasty? No. Do I think it's unlikely that they will three-peat? I think yes, simply because the NFL is at such parity with so many different teams that it's just, there's a reason why it's taken so long for someone to be able to do it. And by someone, I mean no one. Now, as much as I want to say that, I do think that Kansas City, with the rules that exist today, based on the rules that existed yesteryear, are in an incredibly unique position where I think it's possible. And I think that it is certainly more than possible, given the protection that the league has given with all of the favorable rules to the quarterback. Mm-hmm. And Alex, you and I have also spoken on the show directly and behind the scenes directly about how Mahomes loves to game those rules to his favor, and also game those rules because of the name on the back of his jersey into his favor, where he likes to try to fake run to the sideline and then turn back inbounds for an extra 5 to 10 yards. Now, he does it more often than you like to admit. I'm sorry, it's just a fact.
That's more of a Josh Allen trait than Mahomes, but
no. I am not saying that there are not others that pull the same crap. But the point is, let's put it this way, if you put rules in place that protect a certain position, you are a fool if you don't think that they're going to try to capitalize on those. Mm-hmm. And there are some quarterbacks, Allen, Burrow, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson to a lesser extent, although he's starting to get a little bit more favor in that regard. But again, there's a few kind of upper tier quarterbacks that are in kind of that world, if you will, or that level, that kind of get that type of treatment. And if they're near the sideline, even if they've got a history of turning back inbounds for those extra 5 yards, the problem that the other teams have is they have a business decision to make. I want to clock the dude so hard that he goes 5 feet deep into the stand. Why? He deserves it. He's a runner. But what do the refs do? They call unnecessary roughness or some variation nonsense penalty, even though he's technically a running back. And if they clocked a running back like that, the refs would be like, meh. Right?
I didn't see it. I didn't see anything.
Yeah, but what are you talking about? The dude tried to fly. Didn't you see it?
Perfectly legal. Perfectly
yeah,
legal.
Totally legal. Totally legal. Nothing to see here. So this is the point, right? Is these quarterbacks, are basically being padded and protected, and there are others like Brady was, by the way. And Mahomes has kind of inserted himself and replaced Brady. They even showed in the Super Bowl the Lombardi handoff little graphic there, which was, great. That wasn't sarcastic at all.
Yeah.
And where they showed the two handing off, that is precisely what you're seeing with these upper tier quarterbacks is they are capitalizing on rules that favor them. They are getting favored because of how, don't get me wrong, they're all very good and they're that guy for sure. And Mahomes is definitely that guy. And so they're getting those favorable calls. We saw it with Brady, right? And so
yeah, Brady had a whole rule changed after he got hurt by the way he got hit. Same with Aaron Rodgers. So but that's just like that's a league thing. That's not like Mahomes. And I would say that every other quarterback has the same opportunity to go take advantage of those rules. He seems to be the only one that can do it, I guess, by the success that he's had in his short 6-year resume. But at the same time, you can't really, like, no one is doing the stuff that Mahomes does. Whether it be in
he throws the final minute more than any quarterback I've ever seen, and on top of that, because there's another layer to that, he doesn't throw an interception when he does it.
Yeah,
right. Like
that's what I'm saying.
There's
no one can do what you do.
None that do it like that, though.
and a big thing of why I say you can never count them out, and I talked about this last night, and watching the Super Bowl, or really as the Chiefs went on through the year, you saw kind of, I'd say, the maturity of Mahomes kind of come full swing, especially in the Super Bowl, because San Francisco, for whatever reason, was playing like their linebacker secondary like almost to the sticks and like basically giving them 6 to 8 yards of cushion, and Mahomes was just taking that. Like, I went on a 49er show after, and some guy was like, did Mahomes even throw over 5 yards, like trying to act like that was like that should skew his stats. I was like, well, actually, it's funny you say that, because he was taking what the defense gave you until they gave him one 60-yard shot to Hardman that he put only where Hardman could get it. And young Mahomes would have just tried to sling it downfield all the time. And we even saw Richie James wide open on a play that, younger Mahomes would have done the crossbody, no look, I'm going to complete that. But, now we see kind of the more finely tuned Mahomes that takes what the defense gives him, understands, I have a defense that I just don't need to get in their way. And that's why I think it's hard to count him out now, because you got a guy that's learned, to stop being the kind of naive gunslinger, or the Brett Favre, as he was compared to, coming in that just throws it all over the place and taking what the defense gives him. And, he had to learn that the hard way, I'd say, at times during this year. But there's definitely a lot of Tom Brady and Mahomes. It's like, I'd say, with how they go about preparing for the game, their mentality of like, I'm the killer instinct. They're like the Mamba mentality of, they both seem to talk of like, they're just this blinded belief of like, as long as there's a minute left and I have a chance, like, I'm going to get it done. And as well as like the preparation that they do, he certainly is understood coming in that like he needed to model his game after Brady, and he's doing that. So it's exciting time as a Chiefs fan to see what happens. But I think at this point you got to call him you got to call him at least on a mini dynasty, so to speak, with the AFC West, and arguably a dynasty-esque run right now with the Super Bowls and the appearances they've had, and the fact that they've won more than they've lost since Mahomes has been there. I think, And I know I said going into the game, if they didn't win, I think that significantly alters the way people would look at Mahomes, because then, he's 500 in Super Bowls, and, he looks more like the guy that can get there but can't always get it done. So, I think at this point he's solidified himself as certainly the 1B best, QB of all time to Brady. And it's he's on that LeBron track of trying to get more rings than him now.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with that. It's definitely a dynasty. You've been to 6 straight AFC Championship games. You won 3 Super Bowls in the span of 5 years. That's a dynasty. If they win this next Super Bowl and they three-peat, you arguably, and I know Angelo's shaking his head here, but you mentioned why the Cowboys couldn't do it back in the 80s. That was because of Jerry. I'm just gonna be real with you. Jerry could not control his ego. He couldn't let Jimmy coach the team like he should have, because if Jimmy would have continued to coach that team, they would have won like 5 or 6. I'm not even gonna lie. Emmett was unstoppable. You had Troy, you had playmaker Irvin. I mean, and don't even get me started on that defense. That defense was hellacious. So just quick, as much as I hate the Chiefs, they are not unless barring their owner and the Hunt family just coming down and trying to imitate Jerry, which I just don't see happening. There's no reason to. They're just going to sit back. No, yeah, they don't. They're going to sit back. They're going to let Mahomes and Reed win another couple Super Bowls. They're already raking in the dough as it is. This with Taylor Swift. I mean, they're in the best position possible. But I do think that is why this Chiefs team and Mahomes in particular should be feared, and why it's undoubtedly, and as much as it pains me to say, they're undoubtedly the best team in the league, and it's not even close. The fact that the Niners are Super Bowl favorites for next year is a joke to the Kansas City Chiefs. The fact that they were underdogs in every playoff game is a joke to the Chiefs. It's almost like the NFL does it to just give them bulletin board material. It's like, oh, you think we're the worst team? You think we're worse than Buffalo? You think we're worse than Baltimore? You think we're worse than Miami? Or I think actually Miami they were favored in that game.
That's just because of the weather, though.
Yeah, exactly.
They would have been like 10 points. They would have been.
If they were playing in Florida, come on. It would nobody believed in the Chiefs. So I think while there is some level of there's no way they could do it 3 years in a row. No team has ever done it. Come on, we've never seen it before. We've also never seen a team go to 6 straight AFC Championship games. We've never seen a team.
The Chiefs did. The Patriots did.
Yeah, the Patriots did.
The Patriots. That's right. The Patriots did do it. But my point exactly. Brady is the only person to ever do that, and we look at Brady universally regarded. He's the greatest football player of all time, regardless of position, regardless of any of that. It was set in stone that Brady is the GOAT.
I have an argument, to be quite honest, in that discussion.
Yeah, me too. Go ahead,
Taylor.
I've Lawrence Taylor in that discussion.
Okay,
well.
that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, I'm sorry that Brady may have been a tactician, especially in the latter part of his career, where he wasn't lying when he said I basically have a cheat sheet. Why would I ever leave? And he wasn't wrong. You could see him play on the field. He just knew, right? It was not right. And Peyton Manning, in all fairness, was barely alive on the field, and the only reason why he was able to still win in the Super Bowl 50 there was because
the defense.
Even from day one in the league, the dude is just a football genius.
Yeah,
he is just
Peyton Manning is a football genius.
Yeah, he is just a football genius, and had the answers to the test 3 years ago. Right, it just wasn't there.
He created the test.
Yeah, he created the test and then beat it, right? Yeah. So it is what it is. But in my opinion, I agree what you're saying, and I do understand what you're saying, and I think there is some validity and truth to it. But I think we need to balance out what we see on the field and remember rules have changed dramatically over the course of these the seasons we're discussing, and when you have a guy like LT that was able to demolish people, and I mean quite literally in some some plays where
Well, he was on crack.
actually,
I was gonna say he was coked out.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be able to
No,
play now because you get dinged every week.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you got to go to rehab, man.
Yeah. But I just think we need to be mindful of just how good some of the older players were at their position, especially and again, Alex, I think at one point we did discuss the Tom Brady quote and whatnot that he said. This was back when probably about, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago. Brady made a comment a little while ago about how all these new quarterbacks, and he was kind of including Mahomes and some other guys in that discussion as well, in saying that the quarterbacks these days don't actually need to learn a lot of the things that the older guys needed to learn. And so you see a lot of these newer quarterbacks just make throws that a lot of the guys like Brady and Manning and Favre and, Unitas and all these other guys say, what was that dude thinking? And they say that because they don't need to protect the ball and protect their players the same way those older guys did. And as a result, they also don't need to learn the ins and outs of the game and as deep into the X's and O's as some of those older players did, certainly as quickly as some of those older players did, which even further proves that when you end up with the Mahomes, when you end up with, I would argue, CJ Stroud is certainly looking to be a guy that could be added into a conversation like that at some point.
Oh, for sure.
When you find guys that are like that, at this stage in their career, they just stand out because there are so few of them that it's a tough go to win.
I think the other thing too with that. Oh, sorry. I just want to cut you off.
Okay. I'll let you go, Robert. I just wanted to add to what Rich's point was. He was thinking the same thing I was thinking when he mentioned LT. So I know, Robert, you're pretty young. I'm going to turn 49 tomorrow, so I've gotten to watch a few of these games, and the 49ers did almost have a chance to do a three-peat. Everybody always blames Roger Craig for that fumble, but the truth of the matter is LT was quite amazing at that game, and it opened up for that one hit that took out Joe Montana, which, by the way, would be a personal foul in this form of how we do the rules now.
He gets for walking on the field.
Yeah. There's a lot to it, and somebody, I think it was Jennifer, who made a comment. Hey, was Burrows hurt this year? He was hurt twice this year, and he was out for the season. But this was my whole point too. You won't see the Chiefs three-peat. It won't happen. CJ Stroud, thank you for bringing it up, Rich. Also, just so that you guys all know, the Texans have the best cap salary in the entire league. That is the competing team. So, but anyways, go ahead, Robert.
I was just going to mention too, the reason why these young QBs are able to come in and just kind of dominate from the start, and why I've always been a firm believer in you throw your rookie QB in right off the gun. Like, I understand you can wait. I understand it's worked out for some of the people. Mahomes, Jordan Love is starting to see it now that he sat and he waited. I understand that it works out. But then you look at some of these other QBs like Herbert, Stroud, guys that were thrown in right off the bat, kind of just. I could even kind of throw in Tua because his situation was also kind of weird because there was a whole thing with Brian Flores, didn't even want him. But whatever, I'm getting way off track. The point is, the league is now set up to where QBs, the league is set up for the QBs to succeed. Back then in the 80s and even into the 90s, it was you brought your run game and you brought your defense. You could win a Super Bowl without a high caliber QB. We saw the Ravens do it in 2000 with Trent Dilfer. Not to say that Trent Dilfer wasn't a bad QB, but he wasn't Montana. He wasn't Young. He wasn't Elway. Some of these other legends in the game that we look back on and say, yeah, they carried their team. Look at Dan Marino. He's looked at nobody really even talks about Marino in that high of a regard because he never had that championship success. He threw for over 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns in an era where running the ball was the way to win. And if you didn't run the ball, people would look at you like, what are you doing? So now in the league where, because the NFL loves ratings, the NFL loves the money that the big yards, the big high-scoring games bring in, it's obviously now catered to those quarterbacks, and they're able to get away with throwing these balls that these old legends are looking at like, I wouldn't even dare dream about throwing that, and he's over here doing it in a big game or in a division game. So I think it's definitely the era of it is definitely shifting, and who knows, this era could shift again if we see some where the QBs start having too much power and they have to kind of retract that a little bit. I don't see it happening just because of the popularity of the game and the money, the revenue that the league is generating because of this and because of these quarterbacks. I mean, just look at the AFC. It's loaded with young talent, with supposed young talent, where if you asked these AFC teams, hey, do you want to trade your QB for someone else? They'd probably say no. The Texans, the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Broncos,
Bengals,
sorry, Rich.
Ravens,
Bengals, Ravens,
Bills,
the Bills,
Dolphins,
I guess
probably.
if they sign him, I'll say yeah. If they sign him to an extension this offseason, I'll say yeah. The Jets, you could argue because they went out and got Rodgers. I know he wasn't necessarily, maybe they would get rid of him to go younger just in that sense. But, a lot of these teams have their QB set already. Or the Jags, I forgot to mention the Jags, even though I don't believe in Lawrence personally, but the dude has a playoff win, so you can't fault him for that.
Against who?
Let's just on to the next portion of that.
Who do you beat in the playoffs?
I don't want to talk about that anymore. Listen,
Get two, Dwight.
So there's two things to unpack in that, and then I want to quickly discuss Chris Jones' both comment that he made both today and also what he represented. I think for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, I think has been wildly understated by many. And I think that needs to be spoken about. And oddly enough, it's the Broncos dude that's bringing it up. So, hey, let's we'll look at it from what you just said there, Robert, about the quarterbacks and whatnot. We are seeing a tremendous number of soft tissue injuries from many skill position guys. And there is a part of me that is wondering if some of the types of plays that they are being put in or situations that they are being put in are both causing those types of injuries. And I mean that directly relating to where the quarterback is putting them in terms of throwing them the ball and like a reckless abandon for the fact that they're going to get just absolutely clocked over the middle. So there's that. And then the other one is how they're getting hit. Another big one here is the strike zone is no longer the strike zone. The strike zone is basically almost like waist down, and you're now getting absolutely just wrecked in your knees, which are for those of you who don't know the ins and outs of kind of the functionality of the body and have any kind of kinesiology background at all. Those are some of the most complex joints, or one of the most complex joints in your body. And if you ask any contact sport player, Alex, I don't know. I mean, I played very high level rugby competitively, and Alex, obviously with your football background, I mean, most dudes that play those high level contact sports, they will gladly accept basically a body shot in favor of getting hit in the knees directly, because your knees are so prone to bending out of place, or the ligaments and all the tendons and all the connective tissue there. That stuff can literally end your career. I mean,
look at Todd Gurley.
As someone that tore their ACL themselves, I can attest for that.
Yeah,
did not end my career, but was not a fun process. It took every bit of a year.
Yeah. And so, I mean, even with breaking, so I shattered my right leg, which was fun. I mean, I literally broke my leg so badly that I could not move my ankle. And I have horse legs. And I'm literally, I got a medic on the sideline. All right, move your foot left. I was like, I can't move my leg. And he's like, what? And like, my legs are like literally like that big. And he's like, move your foot. I was like, can't. So it was, we'll call that interesting. But those are the things that you want to avoid. You want to avoid those lower leg injuries. In my case there, I had 4 guys jump on my leg. So it look, that's like 800 pounds plus coming down on your one bone. That crap's just going to happen. But in football, these soft tissue injuries are absolutely just they're becoming so common to bounce back from now. So I guess there's a positive there, but they're also happening, it seems at least, a little bit more frequently, but they're not being treated as they're not being seen as serious because of the medical breakthroughs we've had in repair. But you still question whether or not these guys will ever regain that old form when the elasticity of those particular tissues are so critical for what these guys do for a living, that you would never want to risk it if you didn't need to. I do want to jump over though to Chris Jones and the earlier comment I made. I think really someone that really ought to have been touted more from the Chiefs side. He single-handedly prevented the Niners from effectively winning that game, in my opinion.
Twice.
For me?
Twice. He single-handedly did that.
There was 3 times.
Yeah.
There's 3 times. So he was the reason, and I really think that many Chiefs fans haven't really given him that credit, because they keep on saying, "Oh, we'll move on him in the offseason." And I'm sitting here as a Broncos fan, is like, "Oh, I'll have him." Like
yes,
right
here.
Tomorrow.
Yep.
We're
blank check, slamming the wallet down.
Believe me, Rich, we were all sitting there going, I hope Chris Jones really likes the locker room and the training facility.
He did say all that.
I hope you like the fact that you don't have to pay taxes on $40 million, because we will open up the checkbook, buddy. Come on over.
Yeah, I mean, he really is that good. Like, he just is.
Oh, yeah.
He is that good.
I would say he is 1B to Donald's 1A. If they're not,
I think he's 1A.
I
think he's 1A above
better
Donald.
than Aaron Donald, man.
Yeah.
This is the way I see it. There was a period of time where Jones was here and Donald was here, and then I think we've kind of seen this now.
Yeah.
I think we've seen a shift in parity. I think Chris Jones has he's started to understand protections a lot better, and he's young enough where he has the athleticism to capitalize on that. Aaron Donald used to be that guy, but I think he's just lost a bit of a step because he's aging. And I truly think that Jones has kind of overtaken him at that specific position. And I'm sure in a few years there'll be another guy that's going to step up and kind of take over for Chris Jones, right? You know, the male human body can only sustain that perfect balance between strength and agility for so long when you play at such a high contact and high collision sport like football. So it stands to reason that you know, he's going to have a certain window, and he's in that window right now. We are in division, sadly, witnessing the best interior pass rusher in the NFL, and we get the unfortunate position of playing him twice.
Yep.
Father
Time is undefeated.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah,
he will be 30.
And Alex, just one last thing on Jones is when the Chiefs were in the peak of the sloppy football play in that game, he pulled the entire bench front and center and said, "No more." He was the guy. He was that rally cry on the team.
Yeah.
It pained me to see it, because when I saw that happening and when I saw all the other men in that locker room, you know, just yes, sir. You know,
yes, right away,
Mr. Jones. Right away, Mr. Jones. When I saw that happen, I knew there was going to be trouble, because you had a completely uniform locker room, everyone working in lockstep, and you had a guy that has done it, pushing the rest of the team to the level that they needed to get to in order to also do it. He's a special player, and honestly, you'd be foolish to let him even entertain an offer from another franchise.
Walk out the building.
And sorry, one last thing. And yes, I recognize that will be at the expense of Snead.
Yes, that's
the big one.
Thank you, Rich. But that all I was going to add to that was that if I could just make the basketball parallel of this for the Kansas City Chiefs, Chris Jones is your Shaq, and Mahomes is your Kobe. And if you remember when they let Shaq go, Shaq won the championship with Miami. Took a bit of time for Kobe to get back into it. So you guys let him go. Yeah, if you guys let him go, believe me, there. You can even let him go to another division if you want to, but don't
Preferably
think
the
that
NFC.
The and the Chargers and the Broncos aren't going to put everything in to go get him, because we're all in to go get someone like Chris Jones.
Generational player. I mean, just to quickly piggyback off what Angelo says. I mean, you can't let him go. Snead, you guys are so deep at that corner position to where you can afford to let him walk. Jones got to come back.
Yeah, that's, I mean, pretty much what I know I've been kind of on the fence between one or the other, but I mean, I'm not naive, and I understand that they're not going to be able to sign both outside of someone taking a seriously drastic hometown discount. But, that being said, Chris Jones is undoubtedly, a game changer / game wrecker from the defensive line position. And I mean, the thing that makes him so special is the dude is 6'6", 315 and can rush from the 3-tech or, from the edge and not seamlessly not miss a beat on anything. And I think that's what kind of makes him more unique than Aaron Donald, in that, they can move him everywhere. He's sort of been the like you mentioned, like Shaq, like, I mean, he obviously, Spags benefits from having a guy like that to build his defense around, because he sends these, unorthodox blitzes from everywhere else, knowing that a defense has to at least, start with accounting for Chris Jones before doing anything else.
And I know double team that man.
Yeah, and I mean, in the Super Bowl, it wasn't like the most. If you go look at just the black and white stat line, right? Like, he just had 4 tackles, no sacks. But if you go look at the deeper analytics of it, I think he had like a 28% pressure percentage, which was like ungodly stupid. I mean, he was in that backfield nonstop. I thought with his pressure, along with, the way Spags called the game and blitzed when he did, that certainly got to Purdy and sped up his kind of cerebral clock at a certain point in the game. Where we got to later in the game where, like, Ayuk was wide open when McDuffie blitzed. But I think because of the consistent pressure he was facing, he wasn't as composed to know, like, oh, that guy just came off the edge, that guy's open. He was like, oh crap, Chris Jones is going to be here in 0.3 seconds. Oh, there's a guy coming off the edge. I got to throw it, And yeah, I mean, that's a guy that you can't let leave. That being said, this front office has obviously shown that they are willing to move on from people if the money doesn't fit right with them. And, kind of, as I said, it's a testament to front office all the way down to the coaching and the product on the field. I mean, we moved on from Tyreek Hill. That is, like, right up there in terms of a wide receiver of wide receivers, because, the money didn't match up. And they were able to move on, granted in a totally different way, but able to move on and still get success. That being said, though, it's one thing when you move on from a wide receiver, but you still got the Ferrari in the garage and the Jag with Kelsey. It's another thing to get rid of your number one car on the defensive side of the ball and expect that everything will be fine. So honestly, I don't think that they let Chris Jones walk. I think the only way that you see them do that is if it's some kind of like tag and trade where they get some kind of return. But I don't think that and I think the front office understands that you can't let him not finish his career out as a Chief. And certainly with the stats that he has and what he put on display this whole season and in the Super Bowl, on top of what you three have said, as well as probably 27, 28 other teams, will definitely give him, $150 million to come finish out his career somewhere else. So, it'll be interesting to see how. I know I said before the show, the Super Bowl high is probably riding pretty strong, and that's why, we saw today at the parade and in very much a Wolf of Wall Street manner, he said, "I'm not leaving." But we'll see what happens once we really come down to, like, hey, this might be the last contract I get that's of significance. Oh, they only want to pay me $15 million a year, and I don't I'll never like knock someone for going to get their bag. You know, I mean, like I'll never feel bad for him for only making 15 mil rather than 20. But I mean, as a player and in this not for long league, I would understand why Chris Jones would leave if it's for $150 million. I hope that they are able to work it out with, he feels like he's getting fairly compensated on top of, you know, feels like he's still in the best place to win championships. But you know, that is to be determined at this point. So yeah, I mean, but I'd say that's the biggest looming question is, you know, is it Snead or Jones? You know, at least for the front office. I know the answer or how I would answer that question, but I think that's the biggest question because those are two guys that you don't really have the season you have without the play that they gave you all year. Yeah.
Hey,
Yep.
and I just know what DZ is saying is praying that Jones goes to the NFC because you know, on all the draft boards that I'm sure all four of us are doing early, if Jones stays in the West and we don't get him, I'm one of the people that's like, you know what? If we pick up Jackson Powers Johnson at 13, I'd be fine with that. I would 100% be fine with a 330-pound center who has young feet and can move because, good Lord, who's going to stop Chris Jones? You know, so yeah, no, good point, DZ.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just to quickly say, I wanted to quickly get your opinion on this, Alex. What would you offer him? Kind of seeing, you know, he's 30 years old, like you did mention. What are you thinking? 5 years? You thinking?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Alex,
I mean,
before you answer, real quick, Alex, before you answer that, I just want to also remind you that Tyreek Hill didn't want to leave. You guys did offer him money, but the Miami Dolphins said, "Here's $70-something million all up front for you right now." And Tyreek said, "As much as I want to stay, man, how do I turn that down?" So when he asked you that question, answer accordingly with the money that you're talking about, because there are plenty of teams with so much money that they can do the same thing Miami did.
I'd be curious to ask Tyreek how he feels about money now when he saw his former team win 2 rings without him, though, because there is something to be said about financial longevity that comes with legacy and success on the field. I mean, Tom Brady left hundreds of millions of dollars on the field to field a better team around him, and he doesn't seem to be hurting from not getting that contract type money. And I think that's you know, where Chris Jones will have to come from if he wants to stay in KC, because I think KC's gonna be like, look, dude, I would give you $30 million a year if I could, but I can't do that and sustainably, you know, keep this ship at full mass as it has been. And so that's why I said it's going to be interesting to see the two sides, because I'm sure Chris Jones is like going to look at Aaron Donald's last extension that I think was like 28 mil or 28.5 mil a year with like 120 guaranteed, and say, give me something a little bit better than that, and we're good.
Up those numbers.
And maybe that meshes out with them, you know, replacing Snead through either bargain free agent guys or someone in the draft and giving Jones that money. I'm not really sure how the financials of all that would work out. But, you know, I think that it's probably, you got to look at probably from KC to be not offensive, would probably have to be somewhere in the range of like 23 to 25 is probably your hometown discount, while also paying the man what he deserves. But, you know, I mean, I don't think that there certainly will be other teams that are probably already working on an offer to give him. That's like, I know you want to stay in KC, look at this. And, you know, that's why I felt it was necessary to talk about the legacy component of it too, because I mean, that's got to be a factor that he's weighed, or at least already. And I think probably a reason why he said what he said today is like, damn, you know, 40 mil a year would be awesome, but what's 40 mil a year when we go, you know, 2-16 and my team's picking in the top 5 every year? And, you know, or vice versa, compared to this team that has Coach Reed, who's indicated he's not leaving anytime soon, you know, Patrick Mahomes, who's already on his second contract and openly talking about trying to restructure that to give more cap space. in this winning formula, I think he'll be hard pressed to leave unless they're just like totally lowballing him on money. But knowing Beach too, I think that he'll probably try to include some incentive-ridden deal that's like, if you continue to go out and get 15 sacks a year, like, you're going to make the money you want, but I'm not going to guarantee it. We'll never really, like, we'll never know the exact financials of what they offered Tyreek, but the rumblings out there are that it wasn't that much less than what Miami was giving him. And I think with Tyreek, it probably came down to a matter of principle of like, I went out here and did what I did for your offense, and kind of, he probably felt created the success of Mahomes and brought in that success, at least at the start. And you guys are trying to lowball me. And so, I think that's where for Chris Jones, you'd have to kind of leave his pride at the door in that realm and understand, like, you're not going to get full blown money to stay there, but hopefully the front office, does what they need to do to give him enough that he feels it's reasonable.
Yeah. Hey, two things before you move on, Rich, because I know you really want to move on. But with Tyreek, he is generational enough that it's a little unfair that we're judging Miami when Miami had so many injuries that happened, and crucial injuries like Jaden Phillips and so on and so forth, that I don't know what Miami could have done this year with a full team. I would have liked to see what Miami could have done this year with a full team. And when you were saying, hey, where would he go? And he might end up being 2-14. If the Texans offered Chris Jones that Aaron Donald money, which, by the way, they have the money. How good, Rich, would the Texans be with Chris Jones in it right now?
Will Anderson would be a monster. That's Chris Jones. He just won Defensive Rookie of the Year.
I think that defense would be unfortunate. I really do, because they were already ascending with a much lesser team. And the difference between Chris Jones and 99% of other free agents is he is the equivalent of DeMarcus Ware.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that DeMarcus Ware and Chris Jones are the same player. My point is, though, is when DeMarcus Ware came to Denver, he was completely polished, completely mature, and he knew exactly what he needed to do to win. And that is Chris Jones. Like, Chris Jones is literally walk the card up and just put it in the Hall of Fame. He is at that level. You cannot speak to this generation of players without him. I'm sorry, that is not simple. And so when you bring in a dude like that, like DeMarcus Ware was, and you bring a dude like that into a team, and you then put him on the same team that was a stone's throw away from being in discussions, even this year, he's that guy. He can be a difference maker. And on top of that, he's also a guy that I believe, as we saw in the Super Bowl, that can elevate others around him, which is very unique in the defensive line position. And Alex, I think you're seeing some of the other D linemen on your team benefit from Chris Jones, like your Carl Loftus, like your, go through that list.
Nick Bolton looks amazing, but what would Nick Bolton look like right now if Chris Jones wasn't there? And that's why I was comparing him to Shaq, Rich, is because if you put Chris Jones and they said $40 million, Chris Jones, come to the Texans, would what we saw CJ Stroud and that team do already? They automatically jump. Automatic. It's like putting Shaq with Dwight White. So why wouldn't we?
In a way, the consistent success that the Chiefs has had. Like, it's one thing to say, go play with this hotshot rookie QB and get him Chris Jones, and they're automatically going to win. I mean, everyone was writing the Jaguars as a Super Bowl favorite for all the offseason moves they made this last year after coming off of their playoff run, and they regressed. So that's why I talk about the legacy thing of considering, like, yeah, I could go be at this up and coming franchise and maybe it works out, but maybe it doesn't. Meanwhile, I'm looking at leaving a place that has been in 7 straight AFC Championship games, has been to 4 of the last 5 Super Bowls, and I think that's the part that you have to he'd have to give a little more weight to in considering that, because, you know, like even looking at the Rams, right? Like they gave Aaron Donald that money and, you know, they got a Super Bowl out of it after selling the farm for Stafford, but then, I mean, they haven't been back. Like they don't look close to being back in that realm.
They looked better
so,
this year than we thought, though.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I think that just from his perspective, it's weighing, you know, what's more important. I think the money or a little less money with, you know, what I know with the comfortability of knowing that, you know, it can't get any better than where I'm at now.
Yeah, you guys would just have to use your entire cap space on them, though. So
yeah. And so with that in mind, guys, there has been some additional coaching changes in the AFC West. We're going to skip that for this week, and we will discuss it in a little bit more detail in conjunction with some additional topics for next week, because I think there's maybe some better synergies in terms of coaching changes and some roster, you know, reconstruction things and whatnot. I think those really dovetail in well together. As much as Chris Jones, and he's a kind of a coach on the field, you kind of hear that term thrown around a lot, but I think he's a rare example of where that's actually true. DeMarcus Ware was the same thing, and Peyton Manning was a very similar kind of guy to that as well. So you have a few kind of rare air guys that, you know, are that guy, and I think Chris Jones has proven he is that guy. With that in mind, we'll skip over the coaches and whatnot for this show, and I'd like to just end the show with a bit of a kind of a roundtable discussion where we each give kind of one thing now that the season is now over for the 2023-2024 season. One thing on our team that we believe needs to change, and as an additional caveat, how we would suggest perhaps solving or changing that thing on our team. So I'll throw over to you, Robert, to go first for your Chargers, and then Angelo, we'll have you go next, and then I'll go to kind of close us out.
Yeah, so for the Chargers, the easy answer would have just been for me to come out and say we need to change the culture. You know, the entire team just needs to reset. But, you know, I think Jim Harbaugh kind of is that answer in and of it. You know, I think they made the right decision in that sense. So I'm just going to kind of go with something that I feel this team has severely lacked for the last 3 years under Staley, and that's, can we just get a defense? Can we get a defense that goes out there and tries? Can we get a defense that is motivated and isn't constantly looking like they're lost and they have no clue what they're doing? I know that sounds like it's asking for a lot, but realistically, if this team had a defense that was middle of the pack, maybe even slightly below middle of the pack, we would probably make the playoffs every year. We're losing games constantly year in and year out by one score. And most of the time, because Herbert doesn't turn the ball over, most of the time it's because the defense is blowing leads, or the defense just can't hold to begin with, and it's Herbert in a shootout battle that, well, guess what? He didn't get the last drive, so there you go, kick a walk-off field goal, and that's good night, Irene. So I think to fix that, it's absolutely got to be it has to be I don't know if it's going to be something that we draft or a free agent edition, but it's going to have to be a collective coming together, like you said that Chris Jones does for the Chiefs. We are going to need something like that on the defense. I'm not saying that the player has to be Chris Jones, but I thought for the longest time Derwin was going to be the guy to pilot the defense, and he was going to be the one to know, and he was supposed to be Staley's guy. I mean, he's a good player, but he's just not that guy. He's not going to be the. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You would love to have him, but he's just not that leader. So if we can identify a leader on this defense that is going to rally the troops together and not allow us to falter like we have in the past, that's going to do so many great things for this team, and not just the defense, but the offense and the entire team in general.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Actually, I think that's an important thing for your team. Absolutely no argument for me there in terms of what you guys are missing.
Point too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like Telesco's picks for the Chargers, actually. I mean,
yeah, I bet you do.
but I mean, just to kind of talk a little bit about yours, Robert, I'm surprised you didn't say you'd like to change the salary cap hell you're in, because that's where you guys are at, and that's
Get
where
rid
it'll
of
be.
Mac. Get rid of this guy. That'll solve some salary cap issues.
Yeah.
Gotta get
But
rid
no,
of
the culture building for sure will change you guys. Which makes you. I mean, we're going to be watching out for you guys for sure this year. But you're not our threat. You're not the one that we're actually looking at, because we're pretty positive we could beat you. For us,
you can beat Easton Stick.
well, 63 points, man. But anyway.
Easton Stick.
Sure. But for us, really, we've had so many changes, and the entire Raider Nation was begging for the change that we needed, which is Antonio Pierce. And when we talk about someone who can lead an entire organization, I mean, the guy went from floor to floor of our building and talked to administration, talked to finance. He's got everyone all going the same direction. And that direction right now is, we don't care about the Chiefs, because the Chiefs need to care about us. We beat them, and we almost beat them twice. And that's what him being the interim. We're going to have a full season. We're going to get to talk about the coaching changes, which I'm excited about. Our offensive line coach now, James Craig, who we took from the 49ers. But really, man, if you look at James Craig, he's worked with one of your best guys there, Rich, in Denver. I mean, and this guy won the Joe Morrow Award when he was with LSU. Our line's going to be nice. And I'll talk more about our other great staff hiring, but we're ready to roll, man. We're ready to rock. We're ready to roll. I think that it's going to be free agency that's going to matter to us. When I was just playing around with it, and I'm not Telesco or Tom Delaney, who's really our cap guy, but when I was kind of just messing around with post-June cuts and whatnot, I got us to almost 70 million in cap space, which is why I have a strong belief that just to drive the price up, Mark Davis and Telesco might go, oh, I know you want to stay at Kansas, Chris Jones, but 35 million, and here's what it's going to be over the next 3 years, and we're going to guarantee almost 90 million of it up front. I could totally see some crazy deal like that happening, just to drive that price up. And in free agency, I think that it would be great for us to finally have like when we had Charles Woodson and Eric Allen, like we would like to solidify that. So I think Jalen Johnson's our guy in terms of that change, but that's really where we're at. So I'm happy with the changes that we have. I'm happy with the direction we're going. I know that there's some Raider Nation people split on, should we trade the farm to go get Jaden Daniels. I'm one of the people that don't agree with that at all. I think we stay put exactly where we're at, and we'll see how it goes. The most I would have traded for Jaden Daniels would have been our first this year and our first next year, and maybe a player or two. But that's about it. I don't really want to give up the farm to go get him. There's so many talented people in the draft this year, which I'm sure the four of us are going to get to address at some point in the show. We're going to get, and there's been a lot of fun draft stuff that we're looking at. But yeah, no, change has already happened. We're ready to roll. We're ready to rock. And like AP said in that great interview in Las Vegas, everybody in this division needs to look at it the other way around. They need to worry about us. They need to stop thinking that the division goes through the red team, because it's going to go through the silver and black team. And hope you enjoyed that win, Alex, in Allegiant, because that is the last time you're going to win in our stadium. So go ahead.
Well, sadly, I think that the important piece that Pierce needs to remember is that while he had a good stint there as interim, it's not like he had like a perfect win percentage when he was an interim head coach there as well. I will grant him that he was an interim and he didn't have a full off season to prepare, so fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
I am a bit concerned with the fact that your head coach is the one trying to galvanize everything, because that really should be the job of the GM and the other front office folks to make sure that they galvanize that front office to get behind the head coach. You would rather see that, as typically in any organization, from a proper top-down approach. But either way, I think that coming from where the Broncos have been the last few years and seeing all of those things, I would say proceed with caution with your optimism. I am a rare Broncos fan where I have been quite harsh on my team over the last few years, and I've been right. So
To your
yeah,
own
y'all
chagrin.
y'all can deal with that. So perhaps maybe doing things a different way is the way, because let's be honest, the way things have been going have not worked out particularly well. And I would argue that the Raiders are in the same position in some regards. And I would also argue that the Chargers are also in the same position in the same respect, where they've done the same thing multiple years over and over again. The definition of insanity is the exact same thing as what the Chargers have been doing. So they've now made some changes. So that's good.
Drastic ones.
That's good. The shrink has worked. So good for you. And we'll see what happens. But I just think it's important that as fanalists and fans, as we look at things, we need to take a step back and take off our respective teams' colored glasses and truly assess and analyze things. I was in the camp where I thought that Mahomes and Reed were going to struggle last year, not this year, but last year. I felt that Andy Reid had proven, and of course he then went on to prove me wrong, but I thought that he proved in Philly that he had a difficult time changing. He really struggled in kind of tweaking his offensive approach when he was in Philly. And they struggled a little bit as a result of kind of the struggle to change. And I did wonder and think that he may bring that same mental mindset when he came to KC. And I do happen to think that Bieniemy actually played a little bit of a role there in terms of allowing them to take those steps and allow that transition to where they are now, and that the good foundation was put in place in KC. So sadly, as much as it pains me to say it aloud, until they're no longer the thing, they're the thing. And that is in reference to KC. Now, I welcome when they're no longer the thing.
Open
no
arms.
argument for me there. But until they're not the thing, they're the thing, right? So, Alex, over to you and the one thing that you need to change in your team and how you like to fix it.
Yeah, well, we obviously talked about Chris Jones. That's I think, the biggest thing. But, it's going to be an interesting offseason because, looking at now, they have, I think, 25 pending free agents, including, some big names like Chris Jones, Snead, Drew Tranquill, Hardman, a lot of key contributors and a lot of key important depth guys too. So, I think we'll see the front office try to, for the most part, run it back in the sense of bringing back a lot of the guys that were an integral part of the locker room, the culture, and of the season as a whole. Especially watching how Drew Tranquill was at the parade today, I think that guy's going to take whatever amount of money Casey tells him to stay there. But yeah, I mean,
you're welcome.
Yeah. Your guys' loss was definitely our game. He went on there. He was like drunk at the parade. He took some new person's mic and he's like, "This is way better than LA. This would never happen in LA." And I was like, Then the shooting happened, and you're like, maybe it's a little bit like LA.
Yeah. Not wrong about that, man.
But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and another key free agent would be Donovan Smith, the left tackle. I'd say key in the sense that he was the starter. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing to do, is get Mahomes a more solidied wide receiver option that's outside of Rashee Rice.
That's your entire draft right there.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would honestly, I think that you see them in the draft. I mean, it partially depends on how the board falls, but Brett Veach has shown completely willing to trade up and get whoever, his guy, whatever guy. I mean, traded up for McDuffie, very much proved to be the
Worth
right thing. Traded up,
that was worth it.
you know, so he's shown the willingness to make moves when he sees people. And I think with this being such a deep wide receiver class, I think you look at him probably targeting, an offensive tackle to move up and get, or hopefully one falls. But I think we kind of see him reset that part of the line and finding a left tackle that you can develop into someone, who's already pretty good, but develop further and have 5 years of control with. So I think the biggest priority would be to get Mahomes, like I said, another viable option or more reliable option, I'd say, are that 1A to Rice's 1B in terms of the wide receiver room. And I think you look at that in free agency. And I said this yesterday, but I think that doing the free agent route and getting someone who's been in the league for a little bit, been an established guy in a system, I think bringing someone like that in also benefits Rashee Rice and gives him someone to kind of only grow his game further after and take the right habits from and learn better tools of the trade to being a wide receiver. I mean, he's gone and shown that he has the raw talent to go out and put up numbers when given the opportunities, especially considering a good chunk of this year, the defenses didn't have to account for 3 other guys that were lined up in any sort of set at wide receiver, and so I think by finding, a guy in free agency, whether that's, someone like a Calvin Ridley or Curtis Samuel or someone that'd be a little more cheaper and is older, or, if they somehow work out the financials with the Mahomes restructure or whatever to land someone a little more expensive, like a Michael Pittman or Mike Evans or something, again, I
Mike
think any
Evans
of those
would be.
would have to,
Oh my God, that terrified me when you just said that. Jesus Christ!
My wish list guy is T. Higgins, but I don't know if that would ever happen.
No,
no.
But I think getting someone like that, like I said, helps Rashee Rice. Obviously, gives Mahomes a credible, reliable option and another weapon. Because we've seen him kind of rebuild, why not rebuild, in soft phases throughout these, I'd say, since that Bucs Super Bowl. Like Mahomes got pressured to hell in that game. Boom, whole new offensive line the next year. The defense, we see some issues at linebacker. Rebuild that. We see issues in the secondary. They go spend picks on guys and have hit on every pick, which has obviously helped expedite things. But yeah, I think you see them look in the draft for a tackle, look to free agency to make a bigger splash, so to speak, in terms of a wide receiver, and then continue to do what they've been doing in sort of these bargain bin 1-year deals on role player type guys or guys that are coming off a hot year with another team, like Drew Tranquill, Mike Edwards, Donovan Smith, all were guys that they kind of got in the 11th hour of free agency just because other teams didn't want them. So, I think the priority one's got to be kind of solidifying the wide receiver room.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I'll go quickly for the Broncos. I can kind of sum it up pretty quickly between I have 2 positions, but I'm gonna pick one because unlike Angelo, I can count. And we did say only one thing, not 5. But with regards to hey, you did it, not me. So I'm going to pick the interior defensive line specifically for the Denver Broncos. It has actually been a huge pain point for us. We have truly, and I mean truly, struggled at that position for like 7 years almost, really, if you're going to be honest. It almost takes us back to Super Bowl 50, where we had the 2 DNs in Derek Wolfe and
Von Miller.
No.
Oh
my God, I can't believe I forget his name now. He was the one I wanted to keep too. Malik Jackson. And they were kind of like Batman, Robin. They were constantly getting into the backfield, and they were doing a phenomenal job. And really, their interior pressure was what enabled DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller to have the success that they did, because between those two, they forced teams to look inward, because if they didn't, there was going to be immediate pressure into the backfield. And Derek Wolfe was particularly astute at getting to the running backs. That was really a real talent of his. was the run game stop, and I know he prided himself on that. And if you haven't checked out, Derek Wolfe has actually been on the MHRT network being interviewed, so I recommend checking out the interviews there. But anyways, when you look at Wolfe, he's been phenomenal. He's he was a great guy for us, but it goes back that far. I mean, he's retired now. Like that's a problem. Like, when the guy we're talking about is the guy you're talking about is no longer in the league. Like this is an issue, guys. Like, and one could argue like the quarterback position is another one with Peyton Manning being retired, but really it's interior defensive line is my pick for the Broncos. I think we're going to struggle getting one in the draft because I think this is a relatively.
You don't think Byron Murphy's going to be there for you?
He might, but the question is, do you want to pick him up at the position we're picking at? Is he a guy that you think is going to succeed at the NFL level and be that game changer? Maybe. And then I this is kind of getting into future shows and whatnot, but the other piece here is I'm actually one of the few Broncos fans that I think we should be following Miami's route. I want fire sale on the Broncos. So I want us to trade away Justin Simmons. I want us to trade away PS2. I want us to trade away
wow, you want to trade away PS2? What?
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. Trade them away. Trade away PS2.
Come to LA, baby. Come to LA, baby.
The rumblings that Sean Payton really wants Caleb Williams too, right? So
so there's a few reasons for that. One is we're going to be in a very difficult position from a cap perspective as a result of the poor Russell Wilson contract. The other one, and again, I'm kind of digressing a little bit here just because you asked. I'm just simply filling in the gaps. We also have 2 recent contracts again from this past offseason just to compound the problem of cap hell. So, yay. Which was McGlinchey, who did not play particularly well for us on the Broncos. And we also had Ben Powers, who I was kind of surprised with because I felt that Powers was a better fit than McGlinchey overall. But Powers actually struggled a fair amount for us this year and allowed a tremendous amount of pressure, certainly more than I expected from an offensive lineman who I thought would be versatile enough to play in a Sean Payton system. McGlinchey, I thought, was going to have to kind of transpose some of his skills to even be decent, and it just proved that he couldn't do it. So I see that one as fair enough. I guessed wrong. But Powers, I actually thought was going to actually be better than he was, and he wasn't. And so those are 2 big contracts that have a fair amount of upfront money and stuff like that still owing on them that will hinder the Denver Broncos in terms of future things. So if you are in a difficult spot and you need to improve and you have a large number of positions on your roster that need to be retooled, including a quarterback, which you really don't have because the midget dwarf that you went ahead and got as a major trade didn't work out. I guess there's not enough phone books for him to see over the offensive line, I guess. But at the end of the day, it didn't work out. But there's a huge dead cap as a result of that, which is going to severely hinder the Denver Broncos. The only course corrective action for that is to get a very gifted, very talented young rookie quarterback on a rookie cost control 5-year deal. And then trade away some of the key position guys that you have either to, and this is what my thought process is, to mitigate the number of picks that you have to give up to go up to get him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the thing is that when you are devoid of talent on your team, you need to keep those picks, not trade them picks, in order to then retool your roster. And so the best way of doing that is to trade away some of the players that have not helped you win thus far, or haven't at least gotten you to the playoffs. Let's be honest, it's been a while since we've been there. And so if that's the case, fair enough, but at least you can get the quarterback of the future and perhaps even get another player at maybe like the left tackle or right tackle position, which is going to be equally as important in order to help out that young rookie quarterback that I think the Denver Broncos so desperately need. But the immediate fix, like the here and now fix, I still maintain is the interior defensive line, because It's a position that we have traditionally struggled in, and it is certainly a position that, when filled, makes everybody else behind them better. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Everyone else behind Chris Jones, and frankly beside Chris Jones, is better because of Chris Jones.
Yeah.
And if you ask any of those Super Bowl winning teams that had great pass rushing defenses, whether it be the Aaron Donald, the
Rams.
Aaron Donald, the Rams Aaron Donald led team, whether it be the Denver Broncos guys, like even Von Miller has come on record, and Aqib Talib has gone on record as the defensive back there on that Super Bowl 50 teams. Like, the reason why we look so good in the no-fly zone is because we had Wolf and Jackson and Miller just wrecking offensive lines and getting to the quarterback. And make no mistake, we were as good as we were because of that interior defensive line pressure. So
the Eagles last year.
Pardon me?
Hey, so
the Eagles last year, same situation, great D line that with the secondary that benefited greatly, and we saw that secondary this year just plummet.
Yeah.
Hey, Rich, I know it's future show, but it sounds to me like you're trading down, getting more picks, and your quarterback of the future, you're going for a second round quarterback?
No,
he wants to trade every pick, every player on his team.
He wants to go up.
He wants to move up.
I can't wait for that show.
I spoke with Rich about this too. About, do you think one of these two teams, the Raiders or the Broncos, would possibly move up into a top 5 spot? Now, I mentioned the fact that it would be fitting if Tom Telesco tried to move up and trade with his former team, the Chargers, into the 5 spot to get their QB of the future. And it totally depends on what direction they want to go with that. But if you're rocking with Aiden O'Connell and you're rocking with that team you got now, are you really going to be able to compete next year?
I've been on a few shows already where we've gone back and forth on it. If that was even possible for us to trade with the Chargers, we would have to know that it's Jaden Daniels that's dropping down. We're not trading up for Drake May, and we're not trading up for Caleb Williams, and I don't care what anyone says, because the only person that really any traction is happening when it comes to quarterback is Jaden Daniels. But even I'm one of the people that says, why would we do that? We don't need him. We don't need him. And let me just say, when I say we don't need him, let's pretend in this multiverse, Alex, that Chris Jones says, I will accept your $100 million deal, Raiders. Do you honestly believe that you guys will be able to stop Chris Jones and Max Crosby coming at Patrick Mahomes along with whatever else we have? Because we were already getting to you without Chris Jones. What do you think is going to happen when we get Chris Jones? If we get Chris Jones. Right?
Yeah, I don't know. Hey, I'll say there's a whole bunch of defenses that we're supposed to be able to stop Mahomes, and they haven't yet. So, I don't know. We'll see.
So I think that's an interesting discussion and thought process to kind of go over again future shows. Certainly because you don't get to the playoffs without generally first winning your division. It's kind of just the way it normally works. And so as of right now, those are all decisions that our collective teams are going to have to start making and working towards in the offseason. But that is certainly going to be the types of things that we will be discussing on this show in future weeks as we look at our roster constructions, things that we would like to see changed, reasons why we would like to see them changed. And for anyone who hates my idea with the Broncos, let me know. Looking forward to it. And for anyone on other teams that is interested as to why I have the opinions that I do, also looking forward to it, because that's lots of fun to have those discussions. I just hope we can have those discussions open and honestly with one another, and not just devolve into random insults and talking about mothers and stuff. But anyways, we'll move on and discuss some great topics in the following weeks. Different position groups, coaches, things we'd like to see, things we project to see, free agents and team members that are currently on the rosters that we think are going to be either cut or traded. We'll get into all of that, and eventually, obviously, yes, we will start getting into mock drafts, reasons why, et cetera, and go down that rabbit hole as well. So
Draft
never
season,
fear,
baby.
lots of stuff to cover on the show across all AFC West teams. We will also have news and rumors and additions and subtractions as they come out to start talking about those and what we believe the impact will be, either positive or negative. So lots to talk about. Loved your feedback. And until next week, guys, where the West Side is the best side. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute, work hard for the car.